Question number 11, Jacinda Ardern.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Social Development and asks, does she stand by her statement when asked whether child poverty was...
Order. I expect silence when this question has been asked from my members to my right. The member might start a question.
Thank you. The question is, does she stand by her statement when asked whether child poverty was too high in New Zealand that, quote, it is very difficult to use one measure to determine poverty and hardship?
The Honourable Anne Tolley.
Yes.
Supplementary question, Jacinda Ardern.
Can she confirm that her government did just that and used one measure to determine poverty and hardship for her government's budget package, and it was the measure that produced the smallest number of children?
The Honourable Anne Tolley.
Quite the contrary, Mr. Speaker. The government looked at the considerable work produced by MSD, and of course they produced that annual report on household incomes. But we were very focused, and we are unapologetically very focused on those children between 60,000 and 100,000, depending on where you draw the line, who are experiencing the most severe hardship. And in fact, the $790 million package that formed the basis of Budget 2015 targeted 190,000 children with the first increase in benefits in 43 years, and the increase in working for families targets about 380,000 children. That's almost 500,000 children in New Zealand that will be benefiting from this government's focus on reducing hardship.
Supplementary question, Jacinda Ardern.
Supplementary to the Minister. How did she determine that just 60 to 100,000 children in poverty needed her government's assistance, when based on income measures there are 305,000 children in poverty?
The Honourable Anne Tolley.
Well, the first thing I'd say to that member is, we need to all be very careful when we use the term poverty, that we actually know how we are defining that, because there are a range of assumptions and judgments that are made in defining what poverty is, and I won't go into them, but I would suggest that members of the opposition might like to read Section E in the Ministry of Social Development's Household Income Report. What I would say to that member is that we looked at the accepted, I think it's OECD, range of hardship measures to determine those children where we were going to focus that part of the budget package.
Supplementary question, Jacinda Ardern.
How does she define child poverty?
The Honourable Anne Tolley.
Well, Mr. Speaker, there are a range of decisions on key issues that would have a significant influence on how anyone would define poverty. And it would be more time than the Speaker would allow me to go through what those are. But I would say, in my mind, I would use a range of measures, both income-related and non...
Order. I'm sorry to interrupt the Minister. Members might not be interested in the answer, but Jacinda Ardern certainly is interested in the answer. I can't see how she could possibly hear what the din that's coming, because I can't hear. Would the member please complete her answer to the question? A point of order, Jacinda Ardern.
I think the Minister thinks she has completed her question, but I still didn't feel like I came away with an answer to the simple question, how does she define child poverty?
The way forward is allow the Minister, if she wants to add anything. If you think the Minister's completed, if the Minister wants to add any more, then we'll move to the next supplementary. Supplementary question, Jacinda Ardern.
Supplementary to the Minister. If her government was not manipulating figures for the purpose of this budget, why did her government remove one of the highest scoring measures of material deprivation when it made its calculation for those 60,000 children? It removed it from 17 measures of deprivation to 16 to make it more convenient.
That's right. The Honourable Anne Tolley.
Mr. Speaker, I completely disagree with the assertion in that member.
Speaker.
Point of order, Jacinda Ardern.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. I seek leave to table an OIA that demonstrates that the Minister removed whether or not someone can afford to go to the dentist.
Order. We don't need the latter part. Leave us sort. I just need the date of the. It's an OIA document.
The OIA is dated the 2nd of November.
2nd of November. Leave us sort to table that particular document. Is there any objection? There is objection. Question. Order. Order. Question number 12. Ron Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.